Lightfall is here, and with that comes my review in about a couple of weeks. Listen, I don't want to put the honeymoon hype or bad breakup hate into something without letting time pass. My thoughts get gathered. But of course, I'll still say what's on my mind a bit with this one since, well, it's hot takes and we got to talk about that. With that being said, there's been some players who are not happy and hot takes that have some people up in arms choosing sides like it's a civil war. This DLC launched with the highest player count on Steam of all time for Destiny. And with that, 70% of reviews are negative. Was it the players? Was it Bungie? Let's see some of those piping hot takes. And be sure to check out my Disciple of the Witness merch as well as Raid Zone on March 10th, where we follow the lead of everyone on day one raid. Let's start with the story. This review says that Bungie should just hand over story writing to ChatGPT. It would probably do a better job. The Lightfall campaign was definitely not what I expected in the slightest, and seeing what the original poster art looked like for Lightfall versus what we got was a course shift to make time for final shape. Not an excuse for the DLC, and also, I've used ChatGPT. It's really good at making whatever you want it to make. Even though I disagree that ChatGPT could have done something, I thought this one was pretty funny. Solace1984 says, Scourge of the Past opening has a better cityscape and verticality than Neomuna. This one has some interesting thoughts to it. Scourge of the Past is very condensed and filled with rooftop battles, quick corner cuts, and a neat map mechanic. But I also fail to see how Scourge's first encounter could beat out a whole destination. I do agree that Neomuna looks way cooler in the distance than this part of the city we're presented, but we're also on an annual release game. Then again, I don't know about Scourges comparatively, because this does have a lot of verticality. There's a lot of rooftops. There may not be a ton of bosses on the rooftops, but there's definitely verticality here. And I don't know about Scourge of the Past because it's not in the game. I don't even know what you're talking about. We just had a conversation in our heads. Rob Gamer said, when Bungie announced the difficulty changes yesterday, I couldn't control my anger. I destroyed my TV and threw my Dell laptop at the wall. Rob, take the grandkids to school, not a remote to your TV. No, seriously, this is probably just one of those bait jokes that people get all up in arms about, so I count this one as a fun troll. People do still fall for this though. It's clear to see the community is up in arms as most of the posts are ragging on the campaign across the board. Stark says that Nimbus was a mistake with a sarcastic positive rating. There's two courts you're in. You're either a Nimbus lover or a Nimbus hater. Me personally, I'm both. Nimbus has the character writing of a Marvel side character, which I don't like. But when they fist bumped me on the final mission after a serious moment, I started laughing. I think the problem with Nimbus isn't that they're non-binary or that they're goofy. It's delivery and tone of the plot that just doesn't mesh. Cade was goofy. Cade also had good delivery from writing working well. The voice actor for Nimbus was playing with the cards they were dealt, and Nimbus suffered as a result of that, especially that synthy voice where you don't even know what Nimbus is saying half the time. There's imminent doom on the horizon. Millions of lives at stake. And this is a line.
I talked with Osiris. You know, he gives off uptight museum volunteer vibes, but he's a nice guy when you catch him one-on-one. He got me thinking, which is a compliment I can give very few people. Everything that's come at us, you're just like, bam, pew, pew, cow.
I don't think it's Nimbus. I think it's a combination of timing, tone, and delivery from the poor writing. Then again, Keitel does say I was today years old in the collector's edition lore, so the Twitter writing is in full space Rhino effect. Another writing one. Gameplay is fun as always, but what the hell happened to the writing? Yeah, this review isn't too off, saying that writing made the gameplay feel less engaging during the campaign, but at least this review had something right about the DLC. The gameplay slapped. This review is a doozy, saying that $100 for a story that was written by the most uninspired people. Imagine what you could make with such setting, but no. Cringe, weird jokes, absolutely empty NPCs. $100 for a new open world area, which is an absolute disappointment. I don't recommend these greedy marketing tactics. This is a prime example of how disrespectful the industry treats you as a customer and loyal fan. You got Bungie. Join the club. Price is one factor that I have a hard time critiquing because everyone has a different view on what it's worth and what it isn't worth. But I can't argue that raising the price of this year with seemingly the same or less content, so far at least, is justified. I wonder where the price justification will be, since Witch Queen gave 2 dungeons and 2 raids for less. Maybe Tess will fall asleep and we can steal the goods for a few weeks out of the year. Finally, a review I can talk about in detail from Dingus. No, that's his actual Steam name. They really need to give their marketing team a raise. Expansion equivalent of clickbait. Gameplay is fun. Music is great as always. But the dialogue and story feels like they watched a post-Infinity War Marvel movie and went, let's do that for the whole campaign, lol. And it's a massive letdown after the previous expansion. Feels extremely rushed. Intro cutscene is the best part of the whole campaign, lol. Strand is fun and has some good ideas, but is way weaker than the light subclasses. If you max out your regen, it still takes over a whole minute for a grapple to recharge. On top of having to lock yourself out of grenades entirely to use it, making it completely inferior. Also, all of the 20-ish new legendary weapons are just reskins, and while not a big deal, it rubbed me the wrong way. We got a lot of variations last time. What happened to the team that made Witch Queen? This isn't worth the price increase at all. It's on the same level as Beyond Light. I think, overall, carried by the gameplay. I really hope this is just filler and that the actual work is going into final shape, but that's a bit of a cope. Alright, so the clickbait part is pretty true. I've been clickbait since they put out the original poster of Lightfall and then changed it to this one and then just threw final shape in there. But marketing team at Bungie is just doing their job. I think that saying the story was the best at the beginning is true from a narrative perspective. We established the strongest and most compelling yet unknown villain in Destiny since Savathun and Oryx. Something more powerful than all enemies before. So of course we only want to learn about the Witness, and not anything else. So right when we're seeing the new stuff, we get excited. The second we're introduced to characters we are told about 9 years into the story, it will inevitably fall flat. I do think from a gameplay point of view, this one felt better to play and had a better mix of bosses and arenas to tackle. Yes, a lot were tormentors, but Strand was so fun that it made my gameplay more compelling. The reskin thing, I don't like it either, and they've been doing that since vanilla Destiny, so I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what you were expecting. The price increase, yeah, it's tough, unless there's just so much more coming. Man, I also do think this DLC was filler, and there's a lot of evidence I want to make a video on that goes over all the reshaping of the years to account for the final shape. I do feel that the first and last cutscene are the same, and the story we received was in fact filler. Can't say I don't feel for those who wanted the non-Marvel Phase 2 story. This review says, story is so bad it's not even funny. The trailers were insanely deceptive. We got maybe 2 cool cutscenes, and even then they didn't involve your character at all. The story is an absolute bore to play, and the ability you get at the end of it is totally underwhelming without a good build, which there are very few of those right now with the exception of Hunters. I have very little motivation to keep playing. At least the season is pretty good with the armor sets and all that. Seasonal activity also sucks massively though, and there's barely any content you haven't already seen before. I don't know what I was honestly expecting, but it definitely wasn't this. I think after a small break, this game will be a lot more refreshing. I'm just so burnt out on the same, activities. FOMO is a hell of a drug, huh? For this one, let's talk about Strand a bit. While I love Strand and its abilities, I feel that Bungie didn't want another stasis situation, so they didn't make it as strong. But building into it is hard too, since there's next to no perks that work with it. And until they raced to revert the fragments, those were all time gated. Time will be kind to Strand, but I want to have some builds for it first. Seasonal story and activities is par for the course, but this one is rewarding as hell with a lot of good loot incentive and story beats to keep you engaged. I feel I learned more about the Witness from this activity than I did the campaign. Burnout is also really real with Destiny above most games, since it's really just a checklist game. And once you run out of those, well, that's when the burnout sets in. FOMO, or the fear of missing out, is also very real with Destiny. No matter how much Bungie tries to prevent it, I have no clue how they can with sunsetting existing at all. But all I know is people racing a week before a DLC to have patterns acquired before the activity gets sunset is not fun. This next one says, it's actually fun. People just had way too high of expectations. This is a good take and a bad one. The DLC is very fun to play and feels like the most complete subclass package since Forsaken. And like I said before, the gameplay carried the story since, well, the story was the gameplay. I don't think the community had too high of expectations from the campaign that is supposed to be the Empire Strikes Back moment. Losing didn't feel like losing at all. And with only 1 year left in the 10-year saga, asking questions instead of answering them gives me the same fear that Game of Thrones and Lost gave me all over again. This review says, it was pretty fun. The campaign had its annoying moments, but after campaign missions give a lot more story and better moments. If you like Destiny, you'll probably like this. Wow, a fair and reasonable take? Let's get him! No, for real. I think Bungie did a good job of giving a story after the campaign. The exotic quest for the machine gun alone told us that the Black Heart was a recreation of the Veil, probably made by Nezarec if I had to guess, which is really cool. But learning nothing about the Veil in-game is why I'd imagine people are mad, and making players wait through the seasonal story to tell us about it a little bit more is pretty much a kick in the teeth when people just want a solid linear story for Lightfall. This one says, they really just said the. Okay, but they did tell us about the Veil. It's spelled V-E-I-L. There is more information on Dr. Disrespect's Twitch ban than there is on the Veil. Were these hot takes hot enough? You got more spicy ones? Leave them down below. In the meantime, I wait for the raid and make more content, then my review. Have a good one, everyone.